poppin' YouTube? Welcome back to the Shuffle Squad. Zach Lesage here. I'm fresh back from my back-to-back Toronto Merida runs, and I wanted to go over the metagame. I know usually Fridays we do the top 10 best decks. Figured let's go over the metagame. We're gonna see a few more decks. I will be including the links for Toronto, Merida, and Birmingham all at once. There were a few other tournaments going on, like New Zealand. So it's one of those things where that hasn't been updated on Limitless yet, but I will have the links for these three tournaments. New Zealand more or less is going to follow the similar metagame, and things are always changing. That sounds great. Hit this video with a like, share, subscribe, and of course, let us know in the comments what deck you're rocking with. So we're gonna start off with Toronto, my old home turf. And just before we get in there, I will turn off my camera so we can see more of the deck list. So we can see that there's a lot of great players here, including, if we scroll down, I think I made it somewhere here. I think I came 325th. There you go. Your boy Zach Lesage there with Gholdengo. So I did play Gholdengo, Precious Charlie, because I'm sure there's going to be people who ask. I thought my list was cool. A lot of cool things going on here. It's also similar to what I played in Merida, where I also made day 2. Yeah, it's Gholdengo. Precious Charlie is cool. It allows you to set up. Was it as good as other decks? Not really. So kind of, we'll go from the top down, because I think that's probably the most interesting way to look at this. So we have Giovanni Sasso. And I apologize if I'm butchering any names, and we're not going to necessarily go over every single deck ever, okay? Or every single player, but you can see quite accomplished player from Brazil. Absolutely excellent. So if we kind of look there, they played Jelly Gardy. Now, they played it at both Toronto, Merida, and another player played it at Merida. So Jelly Gardy, very real. I know some players have kind of skipped over this version of the build to go with Evo, and we can see how there's some use to having the Jelly engine. I know that other top players such as Brent Tonneson have been running Jelly Gardy. Brent actually cooked me at this event round 4 or round 5, and largely we think like it's one of those things where you pick a side when it comes to Gardy. I think straight up Gardy with the Luxcape's a little bit more popular now. But this is a solid looking version of the list. So I like Jelly Gardy. I think it's good. We're trying to use the Jellicent's Oceanic Curse to really slow our opponent down, going with those power press. And some people say it's a little bit more like, I don't want to say like easy going than regular Gardy, because I think both decks are pretty complex, but you can see that it's solid. We also see the Team Rocket's Watchtower card that's really been moving up in the past few weeks of competitive play to really stop a lot of the colorless decks, such as Terrabox, Charizard, and other decks along those. So nothing overly special. If you've seen Gardevoir for the past few months, this is Gardevoir. Again, you could access any of these lists by checking out the description. We did have the surprise of Toronto. We had quite a few players who played the deck at both Birmingham, Toronto, Merida. Obviously, Toronto happened first, and it was like Yurko and Andreas who played it. If we look here, we have Raging Bolt, something that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Now, Raging Bolt has kind of changed up a little bit. It's kind of like a hybrid Terrabox deck with the Wellspring Ogre Pawn EX. We also see that there's the Sandy Shocks EX in the deck. So once during your opponent's turn, if your opponent has fewer or less prizes, you can attach a basic fight energy from your discard pile to one of this Pokemon. So giving yourself an opportunity to build up more energies in play, you could energy switch that out of nowhere and really make some cool plays happen. I've never been a firm believer of Raging Bolt. Sorry, not sorry. It's just not the deck for me. I'm sure there's other people who are like, I hate Dango. How do you play Dango, Zach? That's Pokemon. It's all about preferences. I think that this list is interesting enough, and Yurko is probably the biggest name out of who's played this. If you look at Yurko, Yurko's seen quite a lot of success at Pokemon. I had the pleasure of playing against him at Worlds. And yeah, it's one of those things where it's a cool deck, but seeing Raging Bolts otherwise go from not being a top 10 deck 2 being in the top 10 is great. Now, we have Karis, who played this deck alongside my friend Henry Thompson. And you can see that a few players have played this as well. So a lot of players copying the list. Now, Pult Noir has looked more or less the same since we've seen it become this thing. Moltres is the new addition to the deck. So you can do 20 plus 90, 110 damage against a fire type EX Pokemon. That's kind of cool in the event where you're playing against a Gholdengo deck. And you can always get the extra damage with either using Phantom Dive, or you can utilize something like Dusclops Pop hit with Moltres, and then you have access to a really solid deck. I like it. I think it's better than Monkey Dory as long as Gholdengo is seeing more play. On the other hand, if Gardevoir and Dragapult are seeing a little bit more play beyond that, that's where we're going to see. Also with Raging Bull rising in popularity, having Teal Mask Ogerpon as an opportunity to knock out, very good for fighting wings. So Dragapult kind of solidifying itself as a top deck, and you can see like Gardevoir, Dragapult, Charizard, and Gholdengo all are top decks in the format. Now we see a few other players. There's Brent Tonnison's list just by default. You can see a few other players played it. I usually like, when it comes to these tournaments, I like checking out all the lists, but I also like checking out the lists of really top players that I've respected for years. Now that's going to depend on some people. Like, there are some players that I do not respect. Not that I'm going to skip over their names or something when it comes to this video. But I do think that like sometimes I want to highlight players like Brett. Now this list looks like it's only like 1 card off from Giovanni's that ended up winning. So Brent definitely knowing what he's doing with that deck there. Now we can kind of scroll through here and we see the highest placing Gholdengo deck. So we have 3 out of the top big 4s that made top 8, and we have Justin Templar. Now we can see that there was a handful of other players who played it, including Andrew Hedrick, arguably one of the best players of this current generation. And Templar is a very accomplished player themselves, seeing a lot of success at the most recent LAIC, and of course at Toronto, following it up with another day 2 in Merida. So we can see that their Gholdengo list decided not to focus on Lopunny. Now, Lopunny is a card that players are playing because Lopunny can hit through Jellicent without discarding a bunch of energies with Gholdengos. It can hit into a Frillish without discarding a bunch of energies. It's good into Toedscruel, again, not discarding a bunch of energies. It's efficient. Mega Mawile has a little bit less HP. It takes up less space in the deck because you don't have to evolve it. And if you draw some prize cards at the beginning, Gobbledown's great, or Huge Bite can be used to get through something like Cornerstone. If you run into Crustle, you might have some troubles, but you have enough answers where you can maybe get through with Solrock. I do think their build was pretty cool, having access to the Vitality Band and Premium Power Pro. Decks are going back and forth on including those cards. They do have the Cypher Maniac's Code Breaking, a card that I also played in my list, and their Bravery Charm can be really great when it comes to playing against Mirror. You could slap it on a Solrock so your opponent has to 3-shot you. You could put it on a Mega Mawile EX so your opponent doesn't necessarily get that easy knockout. Or Gimme Ghoul does not get knocked out by Solrock. There's a lot of use cases that can be okay. You just don't want your Pokemon to get trapped. They also went with a Secret Box version of the deck. I think over the past few weeks, we've realized that Secret Box is a little bit better than almost every other A-Spec when it comes to Gholdengo, and it's probably where I'm going to be taking my future list. So great run over there. We see that Jordan Nell played the Grimmsnarl deck, played the exact same list as Kieran Farah, so we can see like some really good kind of runs from a asymmetrical cut to a top 8 cut. Marty's Grimmsnarl is kind of back on the map. I know it's a deck that's taken a little bit of time off, but now we exist and we're chilling again. Why? Well, I think players have kind of underestimated this deck for a little bit. I know that I personally have, and decks like Mega Absol end up being more fad decks. So if we think about my previous top 10s that included decks like Alakazam, decks such as Mega Absol, those decks are falling off a decent bit, and a lot of the time Seeker Box can carry and make any deck pretty good. So I think it's one of those things where we just have a very solid list across the board. There's a very strong base list when it comes down to Marnie's Grimmsnarl, being able to place damage counters effectively, being able to use Monkey Dory, seeing a little bit more Dragapult, which you can always be okay with Adrenabrain, hitting players where they might have not playtested against a matchup for a few weeks or a few months can definitely see some great changes there. So we see Henry Chow, and we're starting to see players really playing this deck pretty well when it comes down to it. A lot of players seeing success with the Chow 60. Now, going with the 3/2/2 Gardevoir, the Technical Machine Evolution, I think this is the de facto best way to be playing Gardevoir right now. And that's not going to change until we see Ascended Heroes being legal for play on March 6th, if you haven't really been following up. Ascended Heroes is our next set. It releases today, technically, Friday, January 30th, in a lot of places in the world. However, it has been delayed in a lot of places in the world. So Pokemon has made a statement where they're not going to be changing things up. Therefore, Gardevoir EX is really going to be seeing, this is going to be the same form. Otherwise, we're going to be seeing some Jelly Guardy like Brent's list. So, Gardevoir is there. We see Emma Higgins continuously going through that tear. Seeing a lot of success by, I think it was ASIM in Toronto at 13th place, and then a 2nd place finish in Birmingham. She's really put this deck on the map. I'm gonna be real, I personally do not like some of these texts in the deck. There's a lot of like cooking going on here, but I think that's part of what makes this deck so cool, is that like Emma has really made the deck her own, and it's one of those things where I can't come to the same conclusions because I haven't cooked as hard into this deck. I have made day 2 with EVBox at Monterey Regionals about a year ago, and it's one of those things where obviously there's a disconnect between me, who played it, saw success, understands the archetype very well, to someone who has absolutely mastered this archetype. So Emma is the de facto best player of this deck by far. You can see players are starting to definitely copy it alongside there. And we're going to continue to go through here. We can see that we're going to see the first Charizard deck, Frank Luciano. See a few other players have played this deck too. A lot of players copying lists because we're pretty far into the format. We do have the Donzard kind of understanding of where we're going to be using Dawn, searching at all of our pieces, using that same Noctowl engine. And this is really why players are playing that Team Rocket's Watchtower in some of their lists. They're just kind of running through and stopping Jewel Seeker, stopping Quick Search, stopping maybe Fan Call if you get it out turn 1 before your opponent starts. And players also adding Dusknoir to the mix. So I'd say Charizard is the 4th big bad deck, where we have Dragapult, Gardevoir, Gholdengo, and Charizard again being the 4th big bad. And we can see kind of like where I think 5th is. 5th is going to be a toss-up between 2 dark decks. That's going to be Enzor or Marnie's Grimmsnarl. Now you can see that a handful of players have played this deck at Toronto. Liam Halliburton again being our de facto best Enzor player, seeing success by winning a regionals, coming 2nd at another regionals. This is the list until we get the Enz Zekrom from Ascended Heroes. I don't really think there's too many changes we could be making here. Now, maybe we could check out Merida, Birmingham, etc. But for right now, I think that trade, having a dark type Pokemon, being able to stop your opponent from using superior energy retrieval with Slime Mold Colony, and having access to Monkey Dory can be quite strong. So if you're looking for just like a strong way to be playing Enzor, this is a great way. So in terms of having access to lists, this video should give you enough access where you can kind of see exactly what's up and have some commentary to go with it. Now, we do see that there is a few other decks up here. We do see Sanjay, who played Mega Absol. So we see the top Mega Absol. Top 32 is nothing to scoff at. They did cash out at Toronto Regionals. I do feel like a couple of these decks you can just kind of fall into cash sometimes. You have a good run. You might be the only player. I do think the Erica's Invitation's a really cool card. It's a card that I've been experimenting with in Joltik box as well. And I think that it's cool, right? It's just one of those decks that's cool. It's being able to kind of terminal period after a double Monkey Dory, placing damage counters, being able to rip your opponent's hand together with Claw of Darkness. This is a deck that I think is like structurally it's a strong kind of aggro / control deck. But some of it just does not necessarily get to that point where I want it to be. That's my negative comment on the deck. Is just like it doesn't really hit as hard as the other decks available in format. So it's either a lower top 10 deck or it's just falling out of the metagame. Similarly, we see Samuel, who's been playing this deck, another player played it as well, copying the Kanga Boofs from Toronto. I think having double Moltres is pretty cool, so that you're able to go Moltres and maybe knock out your opponent's Gholdengo with Brave Bangle. That could be pretty cool. This is probably just a better way to be playing it than Cornerstone, honestly. And like I think it's one of those things where maybe I'll just run this deck at League tonight, right? Like there's some cool aspects to this deck, and I just don't think it's one of those things where like this deck just falls a little bit behind. At the end of the day, you're using rapid fire combo or you're a Moltres Monkey Dory deck. Well, you could be a Moltres Monkey Dory deck with Dragapults, and that might work a little bit better. Nothing wrong here. I think that the deck is really cool. I think that there's a lot of cool things going on. However, decks like this usually like are really good to surprise people, especially like at a cup setting, making top 32 at a regionals. They don't typically take it all the way. So take that with however it is. Like, I mean, I think definitely like you could play this. You could day 2 at regionals with it. Maybe prove me wrong. But usually decks like this fall a little bit short compared to the big 4. That's a really big hurdle to get over. And trust me, there's a lot of decks that I cooked up. I try to get over that top 4 all the time. And unfortunately, I just kind of fall back a little bit. Now, scrolling through, we're starting to see Dragapult Charizard. I know that there's a few players. We actually had Dragapult Charizard end up doing really well at Merida Regionals, not to kind of ruin any kind of surprise there, but we're starting to see lists kind of start to soft counter the metagame a little bit. So as we look towards that, Dragapult Charizard, pretty cool deck, taking the best of 2 of the top 4 decks and mashing it together. Sometimes I find that's a little bit weaker than what we already have. However, there are some cool things that you could do that other decks can't necessarily do, such as run Chiyu, straight up fire attacker, having access to Recon Directive without having 2 prize card Pokemon in play. I don't hate this archetype at all. It's something that I think we should definitely look at more in the future. And then the other big thing from Toronto is going to be Miraidon EX coming back. Jesse Parker, the player that made top 4 worlds with Miraidon when it first came out. We see that Miraidon EX is able to search out a bunch of pieces. You can use Magneton out of nowhere and really pop and amp you very much after using some electric generators that will allow you to kind of have this super strong start. I think Jesse lost their game to asymmetric cuts and ended up falling into, from what I understand, a top 64 position. That's how tournaments go. So I think it's one of those things where this deck was a flash in the pan for Toronto. Thought it might have saw a little bit more success going forward for like Merida and Birmingham. Didn't really. Saw a few day 2s, you could see at Merida and Birmingham with Stephen Hamula, Christopher, and Kinhun. So pretty cool there. Now that's kind of like where I think I'm going to kind of stop going down. Like we're getting to a point where like all these decks are just kind of looking mostly the same. Shout out to everyone else who saw success. And I'm sure, like, I mean, I'm a player that made top like 5-12 by making day 2, right? Like day 2s are massive, have some great players in there. We could look at the statistics just to see. So when it comes to Gholdengo being very popular, saw a lot of success, Gardevoir, Charizard, Dragapult. Those are the bigs. You can see how everything else falls off. Enzor is default 5th, but Marnie's Grimmsnarl is coming up next. Decks like Ceruledge are usually good at seeing success at just like making day 2. Raging Bolt's on its way up. So our top 10 is like kind of squeaking out. Like, I think our top 10 is actually pretty solidified at these being our top 4, these being 5th, 6th, and then Mega Absol Box is still probably in the top 10. Ceruledge, I think, had a pop-off performance. Raging Bolt is probably bottom half top 10. And maybe Alakazam is like bottom top 10, but could get squeaked out by Mega Absol or Mega Kangaskhan. If we look at a few other decks that I have in my top 10 currently, Joltik Box is still seeing success more than people are giving it credit for. Just barely out of the top 10. I know people have been calling me crazy for putting in my top 10. Terra Box is falling out of favor in the metagame. And I don't think there's any other deck that I have that's like chilling in my top 10. So it's been pretty spot on over the board. Like, so if you're building anything, I'd say maybe build like 12th place and up. Or top 15. Like, if you build the top 20 decks in format, that's probably really good. Iron Thorns is probably a point where you can cut off at the point you're like, yeah, nah, maybe not. So that's Toronto. We will probably breeze through a little bit more. We're gonna see Merida, another regionals that I played at. I ended up having a pretty solid run. Not like a solid day 2 run, but we had a solid run. I think I made 200 and something, 230th. So I played a slight upgrade to my previous list. I included Iron Bundle. I swapped out a Nest Ball for an Ultra Ball. Nothing too big change here. I mean, I guess I did slightly better, but there was less players. Make it make sense, however you want to take that. Again, I think I'm going to soft retire this deck as I kind of press forward. Going on here, we have Rajveer Singh, Sunny, Word Up, playing their special Toadstool Marnie's Grimmsnarl deck. Probably very similar to what we saw with the Kieran and Jordan Nell list, except there's the Toadstool for the Gholdengo mirror. Maybe I think that the Marnie's Grimmsnarl matchup for Gholdengo is usually pretty good. So the Toadstool definitely could mess me up. I like it. I think it adds some pizzazz there. So if I was going to build any list, I'd probably be building this version of the deck. But if you're a Marnie's Grimmsnarl expert, feel free to let us know. And they've been on a Marnie's kind of binge here. You can see a lot of success there from the deck going from this season all the way up. So we see Jesper Eriksson seeing with the Dragapult Charizard. I think this is probably where I would put the deck at going forward. I think that this is probably just the default Dragapult Charizard list. Now, Dragapult Charizard probably squeaks into the top 10 over that last spot of where we were talking about like Mega Kangaskhan or something like that. So I usually build the top 10 physical decks and I just like kind of rip apart like the last few decks. So I think like Kanga Boofs or Mega Absol are probably just on the way out. We have my good pal Josh Frank from the Shuffle Squad, a bunch of people playing this list. Josh actually played it last week at Toronto Regionals and made top 128. And we can see pretty standard list, except they went with a Lana's Aid, Secret Box, Team Rocket's Watchtower, and Iono, giving yourself some opportunities in the mid to late game to kind of jump back against other decks. Not going with any text for Mirror, which is interesting, especially considering Gholdengo is one of the top played decks. However, I haven't ran into many myself, so I think this is probably a really great place to take Gholdengo going forward. We can kind of see through Yurko playing the exact same Raging Bolt list. We see that Fernando Cifuentes playing their take on Mega Absol. So maybe Mega Absol does have a little bit more credence, making it to the top 10 decks or so. And then we kind of have this huge combo of decks. You can see Piper playing very similar list to a lot of other players, Bodie Robinson, Kiana Meany, very strong list of players who've been playing Gardevoir there. Andrew Hedrick playing this huge long list of just like Dragapult, Dusknoir. So like we have access to some of the best lists from the best players as we kind of go through here. And there's not really much else that's like, as we scroll down this list, there's not anything that's like super surprising. Like there's a Pidgeot control. Pidgeot control definitely can see some success, and you can see players are just trying to block their opponents using cards like Turtonator to discard energies from your opponent's active Pokemon, lock them out of the game. This is the deck that's either going 0-3 or has a bunch of ties, or can have a decently deep run. So great job to Adrian for making top 32. And like there's just like not really much else, like Joltik box, sneak it in there. Largely a lot of the Joltik box that's seeing success is just like from a similar list that I've been kind of rocking here. I think that Kieran does solve a lot of cool things when it comes to the deck before we get Light Ball from Ascended Heroes. Overall, it's a good deck when it comes down to it, but it's just like probably edging out of the top 10 or so decks. If we look at the statistics here, we have Dragapult, Gholdengo, Gardevoir, Charizard. That's where things really fall off, and I think that Marty's Grimmsnarl really taking the cake here as the 5th deck in format. So really coming from out of nowhere to running back into the top 10 or so decks. Raging Bolt doing the exact same, usually very popular in Mexico. And I'd say Mega Absol might make it in there. Ceruledge continues to see success, and Greninja's rising a little bit. Decks that are falling out are going to be Terra Box, Mega Kangaskhan, Joltik Box, right? Like Enzor only seeing one play. So Enzor usually hits a high, then hits a low. We do have one other regionals that we're going to be checking out here, and that's going to be Birmingham. So Birmingham happened the same time as Merida, and we can see Ethan Wild with Dragapult Dusknoir here. Very similar lists across the board. I think players are really discovering, should they be playing Hilda, should they be playing Dawn, should they be playing Research, Double Nest Ball. Really just a couple card changes here and there. Congrats to Ethan for that. Emma Hagen playing her exact same list that she played at Toronto Regionals the previous week. And then we see a lot more Charizard coming in here. We see Oywin playing Charizard Pidgeot. No Dawn, but does play the Chi-Yu, does play Briar, does play Dusknoir. So some decent control over the metagame. And then we see Hermione. I think Hermione might have played, no, different list. Again, we're seeing a lot of the similarities when it comes to these lists of going with the Dusknoir, the Pidgeot, the Chi-Yu to really have some control. And we do see Nikolai, who won, it was the regionals, I want to say Frankfurt, could be wrong. Regardless, Charizard being able to use Dawn, kind of making everything happen there. So if we're looking to have a Donzard deck, this is what I'd probably recommend in terms of just like what we're kind of rocking with right now. Do you see a Mega Absol there? Mega Absol, a lot of decks are just gonna be playing Toadscroll because they're pretty good into this Gholdengo filled metagame. Otherwise it's a pretty tough matchup. And then you could see like a Gholdengo. We might see there's a Prime Catcher build, one that plays a Cypher, a Lana's, a Hops, a Premium Power Pro, a Vitality Band. To me, this looks like a really solid list when it comes down to it. I really don't have any issues with this list at all. I think it just looks pretty great. I like this list a lot, to be honest. So that's probably where I'd be at for a Prime Catcher build of the deck. Nothing really too special here. We see Fabian, who's been playing their Dragapult Blaziken deck. They've really been cooking with this over the past few events. We can kind of click on their name here and you can see 4 or 5 day twos with the decks are really putting their name on this deck. So having some really strong finishes. And we'll kind of look over Alakazam. Alakazam is a deck that we haven't looked at so far. Pretty much looking the same across the board, not really changing too much here. I think Alakazam's a cool deck. It's probably a deck that's falling out of the top 10 a little bit because Gholdengo is starting to play Watchtower and Iono enough to get around this powerful hand strategy. So that's kind of what we got going on for the meta. We do see Tord. I guess we'll go with Tord's list. Tord played Risky Runes whenever a basic non-Pokemon on their bench puts 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. Maybe that allows Tord to hit a little bit more with Moltres or use Monkey Dory. However it ends up working, I guess they can put Risky Runes to put damage on their Pokemon. So maybe Risky Runes is just the better way to be playing this. Pretty cool regionals run from most players. Dragapult, Gholdengo, Charizard, Gardevoir. And then Marnie's Grimmsnarl takes 5th. So I think Marnie's Grimmsnarl takes 5th. Mega Absol likely ends up being in the top 10. Raging Bolt is now a top 10 deck. And then maybe Enzor ends up being a lower top 10. And then it's just finding that like last deck between like, I don't know, there's a few. Maybe Flareon's worthwhile for me to build over Terrabox because it has been seeing a little bit more success. Maybe that's the last top 10 deck. But that's like, if we look into this, we can kind of like look over split decks into their variants. You can kind of see like for the entire format, maybe if we don't split decks into their variants, we can see, so Dragapult, Gholdengo, Gardevoir, Charizard, Marnies, Mega Absol, Raging Bolts. And then, like, I think that Kangaskhan's on its way out. I think Alakazam's on its way out. Flareon, to me, is, like, kind of a bit of a fringe deck, and Enzor is probably a little bit more powerful. So, like, I think our top 20 decks are quite cool. However, if you look at anything, like, above, like, the 50 mark of just points, that's really where they're at. Like, these top 4, like, these are the top 3. And you can see they're a little bit more closer. Top 4, and then it's a distant 5th place, right? So I don't think Marnie's Grimmsnarl is like the de facto new best deck or anything like that, but it does kind of make some cool metagame changes as we approach the European International Championships, Sydney Regionals, Seattle Regionals, and anything else that's going on in the game. So yeah, all these links are going to be available to the Limitless site. You can kind of check those out for Toronto, Merida, and Birmingham. I hope this video has kind of cleared up the metagame as we approach another weekend. I will be posting my own take on the top 10 best decks. My flight got delayed from Cancun, I'm gonna be real. And I've been dealing with a bit of a traveler's illness. I'll keep the TMI on that. But yeah, gas station tamales have been killing you, boy. But I'm gonna keep it real with that. And we're back. I'm going to be going to League later on tonight, so really excited to go back to my local league, see my friends. It's been a couple of weeks. Saturday, I'm getting to celebrate my birthday early with my brother and his wife and my nephew. Yeah, nephew. Trying to think about it's being a newer uncle or having someone enter the family. I'm like, I want to make sure I'm using the correct terminology. And a Sunday, I think I'm going to be going to a new league, preparing for the next week to go to the European International Championships. I do have coaching available if anyone's going to any upcoming tournaments. Would love to help you on your Pokemon journey. And if you're at the European International Championships or you're just chilling in Montreal, be sure to come up and say hi. Appreciate everyone for watching the videos. All the love from Toronto and Merida was great. I took a lot of pictures with people. I signed a lot of playmats, gave a lot of hugs and high fives. So I appreciate all y'all for making me feel more than welcome in our community, and look forward to seeing more people at events. So that being said, I'm gonna stop rambling. Peace, much love, and have yourself a great weekend. I'll catch up with all y'all real soon with some more content. Want to support the Shuffle Squad? Be sure to check out all of our sponsors in the description to pick up Pokemon TCG singles, sealed, and PTCG live codes. so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed the content that we have today, and maybe you'll click on one of these other videos, enjoy those videos too. If you haven't already, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments what video you want to watch next. Until next time, we'll catch up with all y'all later. Have yourself a great day.